Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome into Tom Curran's Patriots Talk Podcast. Phil Perry is going to be alongside. We're going to discuss what I think at this juncture in early December is the most fascinating topic for a New England football fan. Bill Belichick is probably one of the 10 most compelling figures in the history of the NFL. And he's certainly, if you ask me, one of the most, he might arguably be the most intriguing, interesting individual that's ever been involved in the NFL. And we got to bear witness to his genius and his madness, his surliness and his happiness for most of the last 25 years. As a result, all things Bill Belichick are fascinating to us. So his pursuit, and it does seem to be a pursuit, of the opportunity to take over the North Carolina Tar Heels football program fascinates. Here's Bill talking about that on the Pat McAfee show yesterday.
Let me put this in capital letters. If.
Yeah.
I-F. If I was in a college program, the college program would be a pipeline to the NFL for the players that had the ability to play in the NFL. It would be a professional program, training, nutrition, scheme, coaching, techniques that would transfer to the NFL. It would be an NFL program at a college level and an education that would get the players ready for their career after football, whether that was the end of their college career or at the end of their pro career. But it would be, geared toward, developing the player, time management, discipline, structure, and all that would be life skills, regardless of whether they're in the NFL or in somewhere in business. And I feel very confident that I have the contacts in the National Football League to pave the way for those players that would have the ability to have the opportunity to compete in the National Football League. Whether they're good enough or not, I don't know, but they would be ready for it. I don't have any doubt about that.
Phil Perry joining now. Thank you for being here, my guy. You heard Bill on McAfee. He's obviously all in. First, why? And then secondly, how all in does he appear to be based on some tweets that you just read from Ollie Conley on this Tuesday morning?
I think he's all in because I think this is probably his best chance to coach. I think he had to have sent up flare signals over the course of this year to NFL teams that he's interested in coming back to coach. He's been able to be in contact with a number of different clubs based on his media role, the fact that he's out of the league. And so he's probably generated something in the way of information as to whether or not NFL teams want him to be their guy.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think this is probably his best bet at a semi-top-end college program type of deal. He's not going to Wesleyan or Amherst or Bowdoin. He's not going to, Phillips Andover. This would be a job where he'd be paid millions of dollars to be their next head coach. I think that's what it is. I think he's addicted to competing and having that job, and I think this is his best chance to get one.
And to take that point that you make about kind of a mid-range program, which I think North Carolina would be classified as, if they get into the top 25, that's a victory for them generally. Not a college football aficionado, I might be wrong, but I don't think they are. They're a 7-5 annual type team. Am I right, Phil?
Yeah, that's fair. I mean, they're an ACC team. They might,
but they're not
in
Michigan.
Their future, Tom.
They're not Ohio State. They're not Florida State. They're not Florida. They're not Miami. They're not Georgia. They're not Auburn. They're not Alabama. In North Carolina, presumably, I would imagine in Bill's mind is going to say, Bill Belichick's going to come to us? Wow. And you're not going to have people lined up saying, well, I don't know if this is good for us down here in North Carolina. So I think that's Bill's presumption, Phil.
Yeah, and listen, I think it would be the kind of job that he probably believes he can mold right into his own liking. Now, do you want me to read the tweets that would sort of give us a little bit of intel as to just how much detail would be involved with Bill Belichick molding a team to his liking?
Yeah, give us a quick background synopsis on Oliver Conley, too, if you could.
So Ollie Conley has a newsletter at Read Optional. He's a writer for The Guardian, previously an NFL and college football scout. He has 31.5 followers on X. He tweeted this morning.
31,500. We don't have 31 and then half a guy.
31.5 thousand. Here's the tweet from Ollie Connolly, at Ollie Connolly on X. Bill Belichick has agreed to become the next North Carolina coach. Belichick handed the school a 400-page, quote, organizational Bible, unquote, with structure, payment plans, staffing choices, etc., decisions on whether to commit with UNC. He is expected to know their decision within 24 hours. So what this tweet is saying, I believe, while misleading, it is interesting, I believe it's saying, after all these conversations that they've had, in person, on Zoom, et cetera, Belichick has finally told the school that, yeah, I'll come be your coach.
And this is Tuesday morning. Phil and I talking at noontime. Well,
yes.
It's noon, not morning.
He has followed up with a series of other tweets. Let me read through them quickly.
They're great.
This is Ollie Connolly. Belichick's Bible would require historic levels of investment from the school, include salary minimums position by position, and a willingness to hire 2 staffs. A coaching staff run by Belichick, a recruitment staff run by a sitting college general manager who would require a buyout.
Matt Patricia.
He's not a sitting college GM though. That Matt Patricia is
no, he would be a sitting college GM. I guess that you would hire him, seat him in that college GM role, and then he would require a buyout if relieved of duty.
Oh, wow. So I'm just reading into this. By sitting college GM, I'm assuming somebody who's already a college GM and that you would have to pay that school to cut him loose so that he can come.
I don't know if there's enough GMs out there in the college level, right?
There are a good number. There's a good number, especially, programs like in the SEC. Those guys are making bank running what is the modern college roster, I guess.
Okay, well, maybe I'm wrong on the Matt Patricia presumption, because you might want to have somebody who's a little bit more aligned with recruiting than Matt Patricia would be, and the whole ways and means in which that's done.
Fair assumption by you. I would also say this sounds very Belichickian, doesn't it? Salary minimums, position by position, and 2 separate staffs, essentially, like a lot of money invested to guys that Bill Belichick knows and likes, including himself, by the way. Like, I'm curious to know how much salary he is expecting to go to a job like this one.
I mean, by far the highest paid coach in NFL history, previous to maybe the last year or two, but upwards of $25 million, perhaps even approaching 30. So again, I like to point that out when people say, well, the Crafts are so cheap. They were spending $25 million on a coach. Anyway, go ahead.
And just for the record, let's see where Mac Brown was last year at North Carolina. Total pay for Mac Jones.
Mac Brown.
Sorry, Mac Brown. Total pay. Now, this is salaries. My guess is this is annual salaries. Kirby Smart's at $13 million, right? So that's not over the life of his contract. That's got to be 1 year.
Yeah. That is, because Saban's probably around 20.
So Mac Brown was 42nd in college football this past year at $5 million. This is according to USA Today. They have a whole list here. Bill's going to want more than that, is my guess.
Yep.
All right, next tweet from Ollie Connolly. Belichick has a college and pro version of his updated manual and has shared it with other schools and NFL teams. But he drafted a new one specific to UNC that touched on every aspect of the program and school. We'll need sign-off from AD, chancellor, trustees, and boosters. Last tweet. There's already been pushback from the group of 13 trustees with input from wider faculty. The investment would overhaul the school's approach to football. Belichick is unsure if the school will meet the demands and is willing to negotiate. So that's really it from Ollie Connolly. But it's fascinating stuff.
So if UNC comes back and says, yeah, we'll do it, then it's signed, sealed, delivered. If not, then Bill has sent up a trial balloon for the entirety of college football. I'm going to have these kids on salary minimums. I've already made my pitch on the Pat McAfee show, in which I sound like a benevolent dictator, just infusing the nation's youth with life skills and football acumen, which I don't, I say that smart alecky in a smarmy way.
Yeah, there was a tone there.
There is there is a large measure of noblesse oblige in Bill, believing do things for the greater good. Football's given him a lot. I believe, just having observed him and had a relationship with him, that he would feel as if he is indebted to football and would want to give back. And if he sees a broken college system that he can provide a blueprint to running and be a trailblazer for the next generation of college football to make the NFL better, if he had all that vision, I would believe that he would say, this is a good thing. I don't care if I make $5 million. I don't care if I make $15 million. I'd like to have Steve here. I'd like to work with Matt, meaning Steve Belichick. And I'd like to see if we can get things moving in an organized direction in what is the Wild Wild West. But I also do believe that this trial balloon is out there because Bill is an angle guy from way back. Nobody is a bigger angle guy. I once played golf with Josh Miller, the former Patriots punter, and I said, it was like 2005 or 6. And I said, wouldn't it be cool to play with Bill? Did you ever play with Bill? He goes, I wouldn't play golf with Bill Belichick. I'm like, why? He'd be trying to figure me out the whole time. He'd barely talk. He'd just be standing there staring at you, trying to think, no, that's not for me. Angles, big time angle guy. So it's fascinating that he's put this out there. But I also think that your point is he's paving the way for a defense of why he is in the NFL if he is indeed rebuffed. Kind of you know what? I didn't really want to be in the NFL anyway. And you can listen to Mike Lombardi, Bill's confidant, friend of our podcast over the years, and someone who I trust implicitly in characterizing Bill's mindset. And here's what Mike Lombardi had to say on his podcast or around the time that Bill's announcement of the interest in UNC came down.
When you look over the landscape of the NFL, I think the question mark really becomes, where are the great jobs? When I started in the league in 1984, we did not have huge front offices. We didn't have big, coaches came in, they were the power broker, they ran the team, the general manager ran the team. Now today, there's layers upon layers. There's sons of owners who run the analytical department. I mean, it's a long, long, steep curve. And some of these franchises that may be looking for coaches in the offseason have had a history of losing. And there's a reason for why they've lost. So I think that the landscape for a lot of coaches has changed. College football is still going to be challenging, still going to be tough, but it is a pro sport now.
So this does seem like a salvo sent forth. Look, the Falcons didn't want me. As Mike Florio has reported, the Bears, Jaguars, and who else has an opportunity here? Saints have not reached out. He's reading the writing on the wall a little bit and being proactive and saying, I'd rather go here. I mean, you could stop me if you want to, but I'll go there.
Do you think this is short-sighted by Bill Belichick? Should he not be willing to play ball a little bit based on how things ended in New England? I understand if you want things run your way in New England after winning 6 Super Bowls here, well within your right to demand that. But for another team that doesn't have that experience with you, they understand what your resume is, of course, but they don't necessarily have that experience with you. And quite frankly, that experience and that resume that you've posted over the last, several years in New England wasn't all that great when it came to the breadth of your program. So in my opinion, the best thing for him would be to stay in the pro game. That's what they, generally speaking, pay better. It's to me, it would just be way more fascinating. He doesn't care about this, but for all of us as football followers and Bill Belichick followers, it would just be fascinating to see how he would get another team off the ground. That to me would be the better move, and just be willing to play with the presidents and the CEOs and the whoever's are in the way between you and ownership, as opposed to going to UNC, which nobody really cares about, quite frankly, just so you can run your own program, quote unquote. Mm-hmm. So this doesn't feel short-sighted if that's why he's making this decision?
Well, it's certainly somewhat of a come down, I think, and because I find the guy fascinating. I'm fascinated by UNC, but I think for the general and even avid sports fan who's not as Belichick centric, it would be a little bit of a come down, a little bit uninteresting. So yeah, you're right.
I don't know if short-sighted is the right word. I just feel like he's lowering himself so that he can have his way, which I get, and he's 73 years old. And so all the power to him. If you can figure that out somewhere else and make millions of dollars, good for you. I just would love to see him back in the NFL.
I would too. But I think that he's misunderstanding the fact that just like how much money he would have offered to a Reggie Wayne or a Torrey Holt or anybody else that he picked up at the end of their career, and his expectations for that individual, he has to answer to the same diminishing skills, diminishing performance that he's shown. And that's why I think the NFL looks at him with a bit of a jaundiced eye. That's why his own owners in New England looked at him with a bit of a jaundiced eye. Yeah, okay, 2021 was great. We got the 10 wins, but we got our doors blasted off in the playoffs, and you spent $172 million in guaranteed money on free agents. We weren't that much better. And then you saw what happened because of, hubris on his part in 2022 that extended into egocentric behavior with Mac Jones into 2023. It's not the football acumen. It's the need for everyone to genuflect, I think, that has led to this. And if they're not going to genuflect in the pros, he's going to try and make a program and a school come to heel at the college level. And if he thinks it's hard to deal with the crafts, have a good time dealing with college presidents in 2024. Have a great time dealing with,
Boosters.
College student bodies, professors, people who are going to look down their nose at you and say, this guy wearing a sweatshirt, cut off hoodie, what's he know about X, Y, and Z? So yeah, it is very interesting in that respect, because the bottom line is he just doesn't want to answer to anyone, Phil. And this is something else that Mike Lombardi basically addressed.
I think the last 2 years in New England were really hard for him. And I think because of the changes that were going on internally within their organization that were kind of deviating from what they had done when they won 6 Super Bowls. Again, I think to me, when you go to college or if you're going to a pro team, you run your program. I mean, Jed Fish is, I've said this for years now, and I've said this to other people. Some colleges are better than pro jobs. I don't think there's any question about that in my mind, because the coach runs the program. And so now in pro football, there's so much interference. There's so much from the outside, well, we have to have a committee meeting to do this, or we need to do that. And this is not about control. I don't want anybody to misinterpret this, but I think it's about how many layers are put in. It's one thing to have a Senate and a Congress. We don't seem to get a lot done because of it, but you have to have some form of debate, but you also have some way to make a decision. And I think certainly college is quicker than that.
Phil, I found this really interesting, whether you're taking a proactive shot at Shad Khan, which is what I thought the comment about owners having their sons involved who are up to their eyeballs in decision-making based on analytics, or, they didn't.
It wasn't a shot at Jonathan Kraft then?
It could have been both. It could have easily been both. Could have been any number of teams that have a son, but I mean, it's Jonathan. I swear to God, I just don't think he's that involved in the football day to day, where he's looking at the analytics and saying, hey, look at my spreadsheet here. I mean, I think it is a narrative, and I hate that friggin' word, or a storyline that has been so cartoonishly overplayed. Unless I'm the dunce, unless I'm the dupe, unless I'm Charlie the tuna over here, I think when
Lombardi says something like, things have gotten really hard for Bill over the last couple of years in New England. I just wonder what that's in reference to. Is that in reference to other people getting more involved when they weren't before, because Bill had already shown that the drafting and the team building stuff was declining. And so we get all this talk about collaboration, right? And so the collaboration, if I'm going to replace that word in Mike Lombardi's quote, the collaboration for Bill over the last couple of years in New England had gotten really hard.
Yep.
So I just wonder who he's talking about there.
Oh, I think that at the point of a bayonet after 2020 being forced to collaborate in 2021 and Kraft making a big deal of it, and then Bill making a big deal of going around the room. We okay with Mac? Everybody now, Mac, janitor Mac. Okay. We got anybody else in the building? Mac. Okay. And then after the 2022 season, for a release to go out that says, hey, no more bullshit. We're hiring an offensive coordinator. I mean, the season ticket holder letter saying we are hiring an offensive coordinator. That is a direct slap to Bill, who didn't hire one the year before and laughed at you when during minicamp when asking him, who's going to do the play call? It's minicamp. I mean, okay, be that as it may, Bill. And then to actually include in that release as well, not just, hey, we're hiring an offensive coordinator, despite what Bill thinks. And we're also going to re-sign Jerod Mayo, who at that point was given a deal that we now know would guarantee him the opportunity to become head coach if Bill were to leave. Like, I'm summarizing. I've never even asked anybody about it. Just presuming that that's the case, or there was a $10 million buyout reportedly. So that had to go up Bill's tailpipe sideways. So those things I believe are what Mike Lombardi is referring to. You made him collaborate. You made him hire an offensive coordinator and kind of shamed him on it at the point of a bayonet. You enabled the quarterback to whine, and then you hired my replacement and made him and let him know you know what, you're empowered to be my replacement. We're just waiting for Bill to get that record, and then we're going to get him out of here. So I think that's probably the dynamic Bill's looking at, which is blind to the fact that he declined so precipitously that he needed some guardrails, Phil.
Yeah, he did. And so listen, now I guess he won't have him if he ends up taking this North Carolina job. The thing that I can't picture, and that I know people who have worked with Bill in the past have a hard time picturing, and Tom Brady and Julian Edelman and Rob Gronkowski spoke to this on the Fox pregame show this past weekend when they were asked if they can picture him doing the college job. And they all said, without a beat of hesitation, yeah, no. I mean, and they're laughing about it because they're just picturing the Bill that they know trying to work with teenage kids who are getting paid to play now and trying to negotiate NIL money with teenagers and trying to navigate the transfer portal and players wanting to exploit that when they come to him and say, yeah, Bill, that whole thing that you talk to us every day about when it comes to competition and being the best versions of ourselves and the discipline to make ourselves better every single day. Yeah, you can take that and you can shove it where the sun don't shine because you've got me third on the depth chart at quarterback. So I'm out of here. I'm leaving and there's nothing you can do about it. That doesn't sound like a world that he wants to live in to me. Now, maybe you can make it worth his while if suddenly you're willing to quadruple the salary you were paying Mac Brown last year and pay him $20 million a year as opposed to the $5 million that Mac Brown was getting, then maybe he'll just swallow hard and deal with those entitled brats. But that just doesn't feel like the kind of life he wants to lead at this stage.
To me, and he's got Steve Belichick, who certainly has related well to the younger players. He would be part of it, and it would be irresponsible to ignore the fact that Bill right now is dating a 24-year-old. So I think that he would certainly think that, look, I'm not some dinosaur here. I can deal with the impetuousness of youth. I'm fine here. Don't worry about it. So, but you're right. I guess that would be the pre-vetting that would happen with each recruit. And Bill has always been of a mind that, look, so the kid who can run a 4.3 from, Fort Lauderdale, I don't want him on my team because he wants to go to 9 other schools and he thinks he's doing me a favor. I'll go get the kid from Iowa, the corn-fed kid, and just bring him here and he'll rototill. And we're going to build whatever kind of team that, cannot be dealt with. I did put out a poll for Quick Slants tonight, and really kind of fun, I think. 732 votes have been in the past hour. Where will Bill Belichick land in 2025? Back in the NFL. Back in the NFL. 41%. He's heading to college. 39%. He'll stick in the media. 20%. 20%. Bill definitely has left all of his options open, as we heard on the Let's Go podcast with Jim Gray. Bill But the upshot of this, Phil, is for all his reticence and feigned disinterest in having attention dropped on him, he loves the limelight. He loves to be in the conversation. I mean, if it's Tim Tebow to be signed or Chad Ochocinco or Albert Hainsworth, anything that garners conversation, he adores. He loves to be a topic of conversation. He's addicted to the limelight and the conversation. I really, truly believe that. So that being the case.
So don't go to North Carolina.
Yeah, but he's going to be the biggest story in college sports.
He would be. You're right. He would make them a conversation. That part is true. I just look at it too, Tom. It does feel a little early. I mean, maybe he's spoken to enough owners that would even think about firing their head coaches. Like, has he spoken to the Haslams about the Cleveland job? Has he spoken to Paul Brown's kid about the Bengals job? Like, there's a whole month left in the season here. Like, jobs are going to be decided in December and January. And so he can't even know all of the job openings, and neither can the owners, really. So it just feels like a hasty decision to take this one when maybe there is a team. I don't know if there will be, but maybe there is a team out there that would say, you know what, even if it's not the Jags or the Saints or the Bears, that would say, you know what, this sucks right now. We're not doing this again the way this has ended for us here. So it might only be a couple of years, but we'd rather have a couple of years of Bill Belichick than another year of fill in the blank, Coach X.
Yep. Well, and I guess that's the other factor about Bill is at 72, teams want to build for the rest of the decade. Is Bill going to be there for the rest of the decade? I mean, that's probably a prime reason, aside from his inability to identify a guy who can run out and catch a pass. The prime reason is his age. Do we want to create this fiefdom for a 72-year-old king, a kingdom that, he leaves and who's on the throne? So like I said, I really think that this is a trial balloon and he fully expects UNC is not going to agree to it because, Phil, it is early. I mean, although it was presented by people who have more acumen in the college game than me, that this is a critical period in the college game right now. Transfer portal is opening or some foolishness. So, but if North Carolina says, okay, let's do it, that would be, showing up at the party and going home at 7:30 with the first person who winked at you. Anyway.
But that's why you shoot for the moon, right? That's why you have a 400-page organizational Bible.
Yes.
If you meet all of these boxes and you check them all, then sure, I'll come take your job.
What am I, an idiot? If I don't take this?
Are you really going to do that?
We're putting a statue up of me right on the quad right away. All right.
You willing to disband the basketball team so you can pay the football team salaries that I need?
It's not the Dean Smith Dome anymore. It's the Billy B Dome. All right. On to more coaching conversations. And Jerod Mayo, as he enters the final 4 games of his first season as a coach. I spoke to him last week, and he spoke on WEEI yesterday, and he continues to make clear that he believes he's going to be a much improved coach in 2025.
I know I'll be successful 100%. And look, you're going to go through these trying times. Like, that's what it is. And the mark of a true leader is being able to navigate this and knowing that you're going the right way. And I truly believe that we are going the right way. In the short term, it may be disappointing, but in the long term, we're doing it the right way.
Also on WEEI, on the Greg Hill show, Mayo was asked directly, has he been given assurances that he will return in 2025? And my read on the situation is he probably hasn't been given any direct assurances because it's kind of a fait accompli. They're not going to move off of him. The team hasn't stopped playing hard. The results are bad. The in-game process is not good. There's not a lot of spots that they've gotten better. And Mayo, as a head coach in terms of conveying his message and getting a team identity, I think has fallen somewhat short of expectations. But there's 4 games left, and it hasn't been an abject and utter disaster relative to what they expected. Hence, we thought it was going to be bad. Now that it's bad, we can't just say, well, it's bad. We thought it was going to be bad, but we don't want to watch it anymore. So I just don't think that they're moving on from Jerod Mayo, and it's not even in the conversation. That's why he kind of gave an ambiguous answer, Phil.
I agree. And, but I would just say what has been made pretty clear to me over the course of the season that, unless it's some kind of train wreck by the end of the year, on the field or otherwise, he's going to be here. I mean, they have invested in this guy over a long period of time, and now they've invested in him with a head coaching salary and a head coaching contract that runs beyond this year. And so they knew he was not going to be Bill Belichick in his prime year one. And so I know that's, what people would hope for, and they'd hope for somebody who's more ready-made, if not Bill Belichick in his prime, something, more akin to a name that they reckon, whether it's Mike Vrabel or anybody else. We could have had this guy. We could have had that guy. Why can't he make decisions that we feel like we could make in real time? The Crafts had to have understood that there were going to be growing pains, not only for the roster, but for the coach himself and for his coaching staff.
Mm-hmm.
And so I really don't think they're going to be moving on from him. And Tom, that doesn't mean they might not be disappointed by the results or frustrated by how things have gone, or that they wouldn't like to see more from Jerod Mayo in certain respects. But I also don't think they've seen enough where they would just say, yeah, this will never work. And they're going to be trying something new in 2025.
Meanwhile, Greg Bedard in the Boston Sports Journal had a story out reporting on Mayo's future and the Kraft's demeanor towards Mayo's future. Again, from all I've gathered, they are solidly behind and backing Jerod Mayo and Elliott Wolf. And these are growing pains that were not unexpected. They have explored ways to try and make everything better in 2025, but that is not a vote of no confidence in Jerod Mayo. But Greg Bedard reports, according to multiple sources, if Kraft comes to the realization he made the wrong choice with Mayo, he wouldn't hesitate to rectify the situation. The Kraft's ego and or proving his gut decision on Mayo was correct would prevent Kraft from moving on after one season is false, according to team sources. Has it gotten to that point? No, but it could by the end of the season. Look, Jerod has not done a lot to sway folks who were already dubious on his ability as a head coach. He really hasn't. Going back to last year, Greg, reported on what he presumed and perceived to be divisiveness that he was told about on the staff, that Mayo was disrespectful or dismissive or contentious with other coaches. And I think one of the things you need to vet when you're told that is what's at stake there? Where are you getting it? Who's it benefiting when you say that? And if you get team sources, you have to say, okay, well, who are they aligned with? But I would acknowledge that Jerod, over the course of the last couple of years, was not happy that the defense was so often swimming upstream and so many great performances were wasted, because the guys who were playing for him would oftentimes express their dismay. And Devon Godshaw did it. Jabril Peppers did it. And oodles of players spoke publicly about, my God, I guess we got to hold them to nothing. So all that said, I don't think Jerod Mayo is going anywhere. I do think that the Crafts would rectify the situation, but I don't think that they've gotten enough hard evidence that anything's happened, Phil, that they didn't expect to see happen. I mean, do you think the Crafts would move on? I mean, I guess the only reason they'd move on is say, screw it, we'll swallow the salary, and we're going to hire this person who we can't resist, a Vrabel, for instance. And Mike Vrabel is going to be, whether it's the Bears, certainly not the Bears, the Jaguars, he's going to be a coveted head coaching candidate. And my guess is that Mike Vrabel would certainly be interested in the New England job. Undoubtedly.
Yeah, Tom, the investment in Mayo as a head coach and the millions of dollars, that you've committed to him over time is a reflection of your belief in him and in his potential specifically as a coach. Again, I don't think they thought it was going to look unbelievable in year one in terms of the in-game decision-making, the during the week, game planning. I mean, they clearly felt as though he had promise in those regards, but was it going to be among the best in the league year one? I don't know how you could assume that, right? And so you make a bet on Jerod Mayo, again, costs you a lot of money, guaranteed dollars, millions of guaranteed dollars, but you are betting on that gut instinct that Robert Kraft described when he hired Jerod Mayo initially, that eventually this is going to get itself worked out. So that it hasn't through one season with one of the worst rosters in football, you can't be stunned by that. You roll into year two and you expect it to look better. Now, I always go back to Bill Belichick's first year here in New England. He got a year. They won 5 games, so better than what the Patriots are looking like they'll be able to do this year. But they won 5 games in 2000. And then going into his second year, prior to Tom Brady, Bill Belichick was on thin ice. And I think we can say the same thing about Mayo next year if it still looks really bad and it doesn't look like they are making the kind of progress that ownership is expecting. But Belichick got to that second year, and I think Mayo will too.
Phil, great stuff. Really appreciate it. Make sure you listen to the next Pats podcast later this week.